I am Heidi Benjaminson, your host of Confidence Coaching, a podcast for mothers who want their teens to be confident, thriving adults. Life isn't a spectator sport. Success comes to those who show up every day with a pocket full of courage, grit, and a little sparkle. I'm glad you're here. Hello. Welcome to episode 153, our channel of influence. I'm glad you're here. Y'all, my pool is finished. We're enjoying spring in a new state. I never get tired of the bright blue sky. I know some people like to develop their tolerance for pain. I am working on expanding my tolerance for joy and happiness. I'm getting ready to present for a women's group in North Carolina. I'm so excited to share tools and strategies with more women so we can stand anchored, firm, and confident in our lane and be the examples our kids need. They aren't listening to me as much as they're watching with fixed eyes on what I do, what I say, what I don't do, and what I don't say. I know they have a better chance of being emotionally anchored and mature themselves the more I can anchor and calm myself. My kids are pretty used to us saying, "Oh, you need to get back in your lane." Or I'll say, "Oh, mom needs to get back in her lane." Sometimes we say, "Oh, there's too many people in the parenting lane." In the first 2 episodes of this special Stay in Your Lane series, I outlined and gave examples of what are the responsibilities that we have in our lane, which include the wheel of our thinking, our emotions, our actions, our words, our behaviors, and who we are becoming. This is driving our life, our lane. It's the only thing we're responsible to control. We're also responsible for our needs, our desires, our validation, our sense of self. We're responsible to be considerate and kind to others in their lane. We're responsible to apologize when we swerve, which will definitely happen. Everyone else is in the other lane. Everyone else is responsible for managing their own wheel, to know their needs, to manage their sense of self. Have you ever showered someone with praise and compliments and they couldn't accept them? They continued to not believe the good? This is just one small example of how we can't force people to think anything. We can't force them to feel any way that we would like them to. And we'd be projecting insecurity or a lack of confidence that they can manage these emotions if we were controlling. So the most considerate thing is to trust that everyone else can handle what is theirs to handle. Now, I know society, even our lower insecure brain, doesn't agree with the separation of these 2 lanes. We may have been raised in families or have been parts of groups where we were taught that we are responsible for how others felt, that we were responsible for the success or actions of others, and still are. If so, welcome to the group most of us are all in. We're all unraveling these teachings, and luckily, in 2023, we are beginning to have the insight, research, evidence-based tools to create much more confidence in ourselves and model this for our kids. So if you've listened to these episodes and you find yourself swerving a lot, it's okay. It means you're human. As the series continues, I will have many more examples to share and scripts and ways to apply everything. If you use any single tool, if you see how even one thing worked, shoot me an email or a DM to let me know. Share it with a sister or a friend. We're also often sharing what isn't working, which is okay if we need to know life is normal. It's just we also need to share what is working when we push more hope and trust and faith back into the universe. Because what we focus on expands. What we feed grows. So let's feed confidence, hope, and trust. So in between our lane and everyone else's lane, we have a channel of influence. This is something I don't hear many other people talking about in this way. It's something I've developed from thousands and thousands of hours of coaching, studying, participating in mental health education. I get that it's very unsettling to hear someone say that when your husband yells at you, oh, the words don't hurt you. It's unsettling to hear we shouldn't be offended if we go to a party and no one talks to us, and maybe our name tag was the only one not made for the event. It's healthy and normal for us to be scared when someone yells and be hurt by the mean things they say. We are human. We are designed on default to protect ourselves. Have you ever noticed when someone repeatedly tells you how worried they are about you, it doesn't feel like love? It feels like they lack confidence that you can handle your life. Worry is one of the repelling emotions that I'm going to have an entire episode about later in this series. It's important for us to understand our bodies reflect our emotions, and everyone else can most likely read our body language. Now, there are definitely people who lack the ability or have ill-developed sense of how to read body language. And body language and meanings change culture to culture. Even so, we have to realize what we're feeling, what we're doing, the tone of voice we use, it has influence on other people. Notice I said influence. I didn't say control. This word is an important distinction. Our influence is dependent on how the person in the other lane can interpret it. And we're not in control of this. We're only in control of trying our best to choose to project the emotions we want, to attract those into our lives that we want to attract, and even repel people that we don't want in our lives. Insecure people are not comfortable around confident people. It's unsettling to their nervous system. People who are not comfortable with love, happiness, grace will be uncomfortable around people who exude love, happiness, and grace. As I say, our vibe attracts our tribe. This is all happening in our channel of influence. Okay, our channel of influence, again, think of it as what happens between us and everyone else we associate with, be it casual or intimate relationships. We want to develop awareness of how everything we're doing in our lane, in our wheel of emotions and actions, we want to step back and say, what influence is this emotion having on this person in my relationship? This requires us to pause, step back, and with a lot of loving acceptance and grace, be willing to take responsibility for our lane and make changes or adapt to the impact and influence that we see. Just this morning, I had to pause and see how my words were influencing my husband, and I redirected. Not because I was trying to control him, but because I realized the vibe I was putting out was one that was repelling him and projecting insecurity, not confidence. My husband has been preparing all week for a really big and important presentation that he had to make today. We've been talking about it all week. Early this morning, I started telling him all the things that I would have going through my mind. Shoulders back, stand this way, say it this way, don't say this, be thinking this. As I went on, I noticed that he winced slightly and wasn't quite open to what I was saying. I realized my intensity was projecting that he didn't know what to do, when of course he does know what to do, and I know that. My words and emotion were not projecting confidence, and I was able to then track that it wasn't helping him. I saw it and I quickly pivoted and I said, "Oh, I'm sorry I'm saying these things. They're really things that I think I would need to hear. I didn't need to tell you this. I just need to be a cheerleader because you're going to do great." The more we can gain awareness of how we show up, of how our words, tones, vibes project to others what we are in fact feeling, because y'all, they can see it, the more we can take control of our lane and be intentional about what we put into this channel of influence. Okay, let's go through the major ways that we influence the world around us. First, our body language sends messages into this channel of influence. Again, while not universal in all cultures, I'm speaking more to Western developed cultures. Confidence is projected through eye contact, smiles, handshakes, being willing to face someone while talking, being willing to join a group and not keep excessive distance from others. In general, the opposite of these project insecurity in ourselves, inability to make eye contact, having a greeting or smile, positioning our bodies and shoulders lower, or away from people. Okay, there are many more examples. I want you to notice the people that you think are quite confident. Notice how they hold their shoulders, their hands. They often aren't super fidgety. How do they greet people? And more. Notice this and see if you can adapt just one of those yourself. Of course, it goes without saying, we do not want to judge other people on their body language. The purpose of knowing our channel of influence isn't to change others. The purpose is that we are aware of our actions, our body, so we're able to be the example that we want to be for our children. My purpose of changing what I was saying to my husband this morning wasn't to make him more confident. I changed because I didn't want to be someone projecting insecurity to him. I wanted to be someone projecting confidence and love. Our tone of voice matters. This is where sarcasm comes across and damages relationships. Remember, the word sarcasm means to tear flesh? The tearing happens in this channel of influence. Another person's nervous system and lower brain picks up on the sarcasm, and it does not feel good to them, as it shouldn't. Sarcasm reflects that we aren't comfortable being direct, that we aren't feeling kind about ourselves, so we feel unsure of how to put kindness into the world. A good example of awareness that we have of how words may be interpreted is this. If we get an email or a text in all caps, the person we assume may be yelling or communicating quite emphatically. We don't want to assume they are, but I know I've sometimes accidentally sent a text in all caps, and I then quickly send another note saying, I'm not sure why that was all caps. I didn't mean to write it yelling or without much emphasis. We teach our children words to never ever use that are universally offensive. Oh my goodness, I remember my sons coming home the same week. One was in kindergarten, one in first grade, having learned the F word. I was horrified. So I had to teach them. Okay, boys, you may not understand why, but certain words carry meaning, energy, influence. We have to develop a degree of knowledge of how our words and actions may be interpreted by others. As humans, we track if another person is getting nervous, if there are fluctuations or hesitations in their voice. I'm not going to go in detail in this episode in all the ways we project confidence or insecurity. Just spend some time being aware of the tone you use. What tone do you like your friends to use when you're around them that makes you feel loved and comfortable? Do this awareness work, again, with lots of grace and compassion for yourself. I can come across super direct and harsh, and as I've noticed how repelling it can be, I'm working very hard to be intentional on the impact and influence that my tone has. I want to be direct, but never harsh. My husband has been good at giving me loving feedback. I mean that honestly, and I really appreciate it. Again, I'm not working to change this to control others, rather to be intentional on the type of person I want to be. Our brain has mirror neurons in them. It's a survival mechanism that on default, we will mirror another person's emotions. This is all in the channel of influence. Scientists believe that we have these because in the cave days, our survival depended on people being accepted by the tribe for protection and food and such. We feel good around people who can mirror back to us what we're thinking and feeling on default. Again, which is why our vibe attracts our tribe. With a lot of compassionate awareness, notice, what emotions are you putting out into the world? Do you put out a lot of happiness or sadness? Do you put out a lot of nervousness and anxiety and insecurity? Or do you put out a lot of anger or aggression or stress or judgment? It's important to know other people will reflect this back to us often, or they're going to choose not to be around us if they don't like this default feeling because they aren't comfortable with it. Of course, we feel so different at different times of the day. So notice with a few personal interactions today and in this week. Are you attracting other happy people into your life? Do you attract confident people? Do you attract people who complain a lot? Or do you attract people creating and shining in the world. A few decades ago, actually, when I first moved to Boston, I remember there was another young woman in my church group who was incredibly confident. She held herself with such poise, not arrogant poise, although she was at Harvard and incredibly talented. She had a certain poise. She was a leader. She was so sure of herself. And I was at this period in my life where I was incredibly unsure of myself. I was uncertain of what career I wanted to begin in. I was unsure and uncertain of so much, and I wasn't comfortable being around this young woman for too long. Not because she was in any way unkind. My insecurity couldn't be in the room with her confidence for very long. I'm sure she would be surprised to hear this now. I was learning how to fake confidence then. I just remember I had this little feeling that I didn't feel equal. I didn't feel as good as I thought she was. So I kept a slight distance. This was all going on in my head, not hers. At that time, I was not anchored in my lane. I was much more dependent on getting validation outside of myself. I didn't know in such detail these emotional tools. So I hurt myself, inadvertently repelling or pushing away people that I actually wanted to be more like. I don't look back and judge myself. I've learned from it. We can all change. We can all change our vibe. We can change the influence and the impact we have. Change is good. It doesn't mean I was bad or less than in those early years in Boston. I was growing. I still am. There's still a lot I can change about how I show up, the energy I project toward people in their lanes. Okay, I want to continue with more things that reside in this channel of influence between people. I'm going to do an entire episode on repelling emotions, but here they are. In our lane, if we're feeling and show up with a lot of worry, with criticism, with excessive opposition, aggression, perfectionism, blame, being easily offended or very defensive, a sense of superiority or judgment, these are all repelling emotions. Did you hear me? Worry? Yes, worry repels people from us. Insecurity is another repelling emotion. People don't want the job of constantly validating our sense of self. People are working hard enough to validate themselves. Criticism and always pointing out the bad or even martyrdom, these are repelling emotions. We don't have control over how other people think and feel around us. In fact, people who have the intention to manipulate and hurt others will want to be around people who are insecure and have very low self-esteem. Anxiety and nervousness are repelling if they're very present in our daily emotions. Now, please do not use this information to think poorly of yourself or to slink away from the emotional work that I do here with you. We have been through anxious years, y'all. Please just notice and use it as data to go back into your lane and see if there's another way to show up and think about how you're handling what is on your plate now. Negativity is going to attract negativity. There are so many good things going on in the world. If you walk into a room and discuss all the negative that you saw in the news, ask yourself, why is this what I'm going to be bringing up? With all of the bad, well, there is still so much good. Yes, there's negativity on social media, but my husband and daughter, they send each other dog and puppy videos all day long. Each night they show them to me. They're so cute. There's so much positive there. I don't appreciate those videos as much as they do. But remember, complainers repel people who are building people up. Critics repel those who are creating. Who do you want to be? We are in total control over the vibe that we create in our lane. I had a client, a young woman, who really wanted different friends. I could see her innate goodness. I could see her kindness, and she just wasn't attracting people that she wanted to be around. After we identified what emotions and what she was doing that was repelling the people that she wanted to be around, with just a few simple shifts in her thinking, in her body language, and doing some things that were really nervous to her, she was able to stop repelling the people that she did want to be friends with. So that takes us to the attracting emotions. that we can put into the channel of influence. Attracting emotions. Again, I'm going to do one entire episode on these. These are emotions like love, acceptance, curiosity, kindness, grace, gratitude, calm, peace, inclusion, equality, confidence, assurance. We don't have control over exactly how others will interpret the vibe that we put into the world. We do know, though, it feels good to us to feel all of these attracting emotions, and we will have a much greater chance of helping others, our children, feel this way when we're around them if we project this. Recently, I was with a group and someone brought up a recent divorce in their family. A few people responded with questions that, while on the surface might seem like just questions, the emotions that they seemed to come from were judgment and shame. These were questions like, well, why did it happen? Did they try to do counseling? Are the children okay? And more. And I know I've been one to ask those questions before. I then noticed how a kind woman responded without questions and with compassion and love, not inquiring questions, but rather with curiosity of how our friend was handling it and validating how hard the situation must be. I noticed a change from mild defensiveness to a softening in the one sharing the situation. It was very slight, but I noticed it. And I vowed then, I want to be putting out more love and grace and really work to lessen even the inadvertent judgment that I put into the world. A few more examples of what happens in this channel of influence that impacts relationships. Our words and actions can either build trust or destroy trust. Gossip destroys trust. Lying destroys trust. Jab joking. That's what I call joking, when someone wants to pick out your low points and then wants to say, oh, you shouldn't be sensitive. We all know people who are those jab jokers. All of these ways of being in the world influence who wants to be around us. They influence the promotions that we may get. They influence who wants to date us. They influence who will confide in us, who feels comfortable asking for help. When I hear someone sharing confidential information about others, well, I know that they would share the same about me to others. Trust is broken in a moment and takes years to build. Do our words, our actions project that we're trustworthy or not? Again, I know I've said it a few times, and I just want to repeat it. The purpose of understanding exactly what is in our channel of influence is so we can get back in our lane and show up in the world in a way that will create and attract what we want. At the same time, we're also modeling for our children who we hope they will be. We do not have control over their actions, but we absolutely do have influence. They are watching us. They are mapping and tracking, two things that I'll talk about later in this series. They're tracking how we respond to the world. They see our opinions, beliefs, insecurities. They're creating maps of how they should respond to people in their life. Seeking to control our children actually projects insecurity to them, and we don't trust them. Seeking to influence them by our modeling confidence, then letting them learn, make mistakes, and grow helps them learn to trust themselves and develop confidence. The more we are aware of what we're modeling, the greater chance we have of influencing who our children are. Each of our children are totally different, with their own lenses of the world, their own lens of who we are. So we don't want to use the actions in their lane to ever dictate our worth. But if you're like me, we want to do exactly what we can do to support our children, to teach them and understand the channel of influence that we do have with them. Before I close this, I want to give you a few questions to ask yourself when you're wanting to change your energy and gain awareness and get back in your lane. First, simply notice people that you enjoy being with, where it's easy to be with them. What do you talk about? Are you discussing positive or negative topics? Are you always guarded, or can you trust them? What topics are discussed that help you feel better about yourself? Notice how people respond to you. Are people comfortable smiling at you? Ask, would I like it if someone were speaking to me this way? How would I interpret it? Do I like how I'm feeling as I say these things or show up in this way? Then just sit with curiosity. Make this like a science experiment. I will notice things that I'm doing or saying, and then I see my kids leave the room. Sometimes I'm okay with what I said or did, and sometimes I sit and reflect, and I want to change my vibe and energy to have a different influence. Next week, I'll be talking about the lenses that influence how we see the world, how the wheel and fuel in our lane is created. Please share this episode if it was helpful to you. If it wasn't, well, don't share it. I get that confronting who we are can be challenging and uncomfortable. The reward, though, is expanding our capacity to feel incredible joy, happiness, peace, calm, and love, and really liking who we are, which, remember, is a big responsibility in our lane. That's it for this week. If you would like personalized weekly private one-on-one coaching to change the influence you have on your family, sign up for a consult call at HeidiBenjaminson.com. A confident mother is the greatest gift to her family, not a perfect mother. Our families want us to feel confident, anchored, and calm. I can help you uncover this version of yourself. Have a great week.